Yes, Penn State can absolutely win a national championship now that all of Nicholas Singleton, Kaytron Allen, and Dani Dennis-Sutton are back for the 2025 season.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Sako. I'm your host of the show, and what an interesting day, to say the least, between Nicholas Singleton, Kaytron Allen, both of them coming back, because the chatter was indicating that, well, they could get one, maybe not the other, and now they get both. And this is after Tom Allen had been hired away by the Clemson Tigers after just one season. So the defensive coordinator search marches on, but Penn State is getting a lot of key impact players back between Singleton, Allen, and Dani Dennis-Sutton defensively, and still have some other decisions to be made. Today's live episode, is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. This is a live episode, so you are just as much a part of this conversation as I am. And why I can confidently say that Penn State is in a position to win a national championship is because, I mean, it's to an extent, it's self-explanatory, but when you get back all of your most impact players and the guys that have the most potential going into next season, Mel Kiper Jr., whether you like him or you hate him, the ESPN NFL draft analyst, had Singleton and Allen as his fifth and sixth best running backs in the 2025 NFL draft. Penn State is retaining serious NFL talent. Dani Dennis-Sutton could have been, it looked like he had about a third round grade on him, and he's coming back. And I imagine with a combine and a pro day, maybe that turns into potentially a late second round pick, but it seemed like the consensus was going in the third round of the draft. So you were getting players kind of similar to Ohio State, to Michigan in 23, where they were able to retain guys that certainly could have gone off to the NFL and got a head start on their careers, and yet they're returning. Oh, and not to mention Drew Aller. So I guess there was some concern, or that it was still a 50-50 thing, that Drew Aller was considering going into the draft. I imagine that he's a man of his word, because he announced it. He told all of us that he was returning for the 2025 season. So Penn State has a fourth-year quarterback, third-year starter, and the consistency of it for Drew Aller. Drew Aller didn't bounce around from program to program. This is his fourth year in the same program, second year with Andy Kotelnicki. So that is as uncommon as it gets in this new world of transfer portal and NIL, where everybody bounces around. I mean, Carson Beck, who probably would have been the returning starter at Georgia, even went to a new school. Drew Aller is here through thick and thin, and I trust that he's going to get better. So I know that there's going to be naysayers that say that he's no good, that he shouldn't have come back, that it's not going to help Penn State. No, all of this helps Penn State. So Drew Aller is confirmed to be back. Singleton and Allen, that 1-2 dynamic duo. And honestly, I take back the things that I said about how Singleton was, distancing himself from Allen, that he's the 5-star and Allen was just the high-end 4-star, and clearly it's starting to show up. Well, draft analysts think differently, and now I'm gonna side with them. And I take back what I said. It's okay to be wrong. But anybody that is saying that, Singleton is significantly better, do they have their differences? Yes. Is Singleton faster? Yes. Okay. Is Kaytron Allen just better at reading the zones? He has better ball carrier vision. Yes. Both those things are true. I would argue that Kaytron Allen is slightly more, a better receiver. But those two, it's the way that they balance each other out. It's the fact that you get the best of, that speed and size combination from Singleton. But both of these guys are 3-down running backs, and you get 2 of them, and they're only going to get better. So we saw them as true freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and they're going to get better. So you're seeing 2 NFL caliber running backs return for their senior season when they don't have to. When honestly, before this day and age of college football, it would make no sense to. And now Penn State gets them back. So it's that consistency, it's that continuity, it's that familiarity, and Andy Kotelnicki gets to work with them again. Bulk of the starting offensive line is going to come back. Nick Dawkins still has a decision to make. Nolan Rucci could go off to the NFL draft if he really wanted to. But other than Sal Wormley, and Drew Shelton, I guess, has a decision to make. But I might as well throw Vanga Ioane there. Technically, they are all draft eligible. But from what I'm gathering, these guys are all going to be back. So now you have a third-year starter at quarterback, 4-year starters. Who can say that? Who honestly, in the past decade, maybe even further before that, who can say that they have had not one but 2 4-year co-starters at the running back position? Nobody. Maybe you have one player that started as a true freshman, and in the old version of college football in the 70s and 80s, they stuck around and they were a 4-year starter. But to have 2, because I don't consider Singleton as the starter and Kaytron Allen as the backup. These guys are co-starters. On the depth chart, it says Singleton or Allen or both. I think we're going to see a lot of both. One of the reasons Andy Kotelnicki ran into some bad luck this season, and it changed the complexity of the offense, because we saw it against West Virginia, where Cam Wallace provides that much value. And now you have Corey Smith and Quentin Martin, and we'll see. I know the running back depth chart is really loaded, and you have Tyke Hayes. But what I'm getting at is that you can have Singleton and Allen on the field together more often as long as they're both healthy, because you now have insurance behind them with Cam Wallace projecting to return, come back from injury, and Corey Smith and his development. And don't forget about Quentin Martin. I think, he kind of looks like he's the lowest on the depth chart, but all those guys have talent. You just get the most talented players on the field. If you can prove it in practice, you will play. It doesn't matter if you're RB 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. If you prove it, you will get reps. That's just the fact of the matter. So Penn State's running back room is loaded. I like the idea of Cam Wallace and Corey Smith and Quentin Martin taking over for if and when Singleton and Allen did move on to the NFL. But that's going to happen later rather than sooner. So the idea that, Penn State needs it, because now the chatter is Penn State needs a number 1 wide receiver. Penn State needs this. Penn State needs that. You can get does everybody know that you can throw the football to running backs? Or you can be seriously committed to the ground game, use some play action. And with an elite defense, that's why it's important that Dani Dennis-Sutton came back, you can get a lot of things accomplished. Michigan showed that you can do that. And Michigan fans don't like that I point that out. But I see a lot of commonalities between, I am not here to talk about Connor Stallions, but from the foundation of each team. J.J. McCarthy and Drew Aller. Everyone's not going to like this, especially with the recent performance, but Drew Aller is still an NFL prospect. He is still a solid quarterback prospect for the NFL. I believe he's going to be a future first-round pick. I think he's going to have a phenomenal senior season. You have Singleton and Allen, in addition to all the talent behind them for running back depth. They brought in Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross. Luke Reynolds and Khalil Dinkins are going to be that tight end duo. With Andrew Rapplier coming back from injury, a bulk of the starting offensive line should and will be back besides Sal Wormley. How could you not? And with year 2 of Andy Kotelnicki, how could you not be optimistic for a Penn State offense that is going to be a better version of what it already was? The Penn State offense was never bad. Now, granted, Tyler Warren took a lot of that production. Kyron Hudson's a good receiver. Devontae Ross is a special kind of receiver because you can't teach speed. And that's what Penn State is getting. And it's still going to be a work in progress. There's the spring portal window. So if you have any question marks about the offense, well, let me pivot to the defense, and I'll pick back up with it after the break, and then we'll check in with the comments section here with the live chat. The defense, Dani Dennis-Sutton returning gives you that premier pass rusher. That was a bit of a concern. Abdul Carter going off to the NFL, you needed a face of the defense, and I mentioned that with Zane Durant, but you now have not only 1, but 2. And then you anticipate the breakout of a Tony Rojas, of a Max Granville. Zach Wheatley's only going to get better. A.J. Harris. So I just rattled off 6 or 7 names of guys that aren't just, okay, well, they're capable Big Ten starters. No. These are guys that, if everything continues well for them, can be all conference players. Some of them first team, but still all conference is extremely respectable. Being second team all Big Ten is nothing to bat an eye at. But I have first team all aspirations for the Big Ten conference team for Dani Dennis-Sutton, Zane Durant, AJ Harris. I think Zachary Wheatley is definitely a second team all conference player. Maybe a first if he's going to be more of that turnover, have some more of that turnover king, right? Live up to the turnover king name. And then you get King Mack in, and don't forget about Elliott Washington, Davian Collins, right? Penn State is set up very well with where it is. Now you need to get the defensive coordinator spot anchored down, and that's what I want to talk about. But Dani Dennis-Sutton coming back, you get a premier pass rusher that will take that next step and be an elite playmaker. And honestly, I think he'll be one of the, if everything goes well, he stays healthy, he continues his development, there's no reason he could not be the first pass rusher selected in next year's NFL draft for 2026. Those are high aspirations, but you know what? That is what he's capable of. He wasn't a 5-star by accident. He is a 6'6", 270-pound defensive end. And he honestly, he has not the same speed as Abdul Carter, but his speed and athleticism are pretty close. They're not far off. And that is saying something. And Abdul Carter is about, give or take, 15 to 20 pounds lighter. You get players that just are bought into the system above all else. These guys, this class of 2022 can be iconic, can be one of the best in history because of the commitment to the program. Aller, Singleton, Allen, Dani Dennis-Sutton, Zane Durant, honestly, all should have went off to the NFL. And the core of them are coming back to say, we still have unfinished business. We want to be that first clear national champion. Not a debate. It's not to disrespect 1994, but there's debate around that one. Is Penn State and Penn State's not considered by outside of the Penn State circle to be that national championship team. So you got to go all the way back to the 80s, and they want to change the history. They want to be remembered, and they can be. It's the total in this era of the transfer portal and NIL, when there's the allure of the NFL and agents calling you left and right and trying to push you to do one thing or do the other. And these guys are committed to Penn State and James Franklin. It is very commendable and respectable, and it's why they should absolutely be one of the perennial title contenders for the 25. And I know the championship's in 2026, but the 2025 college football season. We'll get to the comments in just a moment when we return here on this live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks so much for spending your Monday night with me here on the show. We'll talk about it all more coming up after the break. And today's live show is brought to you by Game Time. You got to download the Game Time app because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks, and that makes getting tickets for events even easier. And not just sporting events, but concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. Game Time Picks, it filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on incredible seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. You can use Game Time Picks to find tickets for any upcoming game. You'll browse through the deals like it's a breeze, and you'll find great value on all kinds of seats around any venue. Then there's the Super Deal that will give you the best value for the event. And Game Time sorts it all. So you'll see the super deal right away for the best seats that are available. And you'll have the seat views as well. So there's no second guessing. The app will show you what it looks like from that point of view. Plus, you'll get the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And thanks so much for joining the live show a little later on a Monday, but I feel like it's just with all the news that happened between Tom Allen and then retaining players, and there's still more decisions to be made. So the news is going to continue to roll through here, especially, so the draft deadline is January 15th. That's less than, that by the end of that day, That's give or take 48 hours for a Kobe King. If a Nolan Rucci or a Drew Shelton are really considering moving on to the NFL, Nick Dawkins as well, all of those guys have that. That's the time frame to make that decision. Zach is the GOAT. Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And normally I don't work off of my trackpad here from my laptop, but my my Bluetooth mouse died right before the show started. So convenient, right? Any idea when Kobe King will make his announcement? So it's either the 14th or the 15th. You really can't make a decision there, but I really think he is weighing it. As far as my thoughts on Kobe King, I don't blame him for going off to the NFL. Kalen, his twin brother, is already there. So he's 1 year. They're twin brothers. As much as they wanted to say, like, hey, we're our own individual people stuff, they're still family, right? And being 1 year apart from being in terms of development, in terms of their career, and now that's a whole second year, but the allure of coming back and being a part of that championship team for the first time in nearly 40 years, right? It's certainly weighing on Kobe King. I also want to say this. I don't know how much more he can improve his draft stock. He was arguably one of the best defenders after Abdul Carter. And people might say, well, he had a bad game against Notre Dame and this and that. But if you look at the analytics, you look at what Kobe King was able to accomplish over the course of the season, he is really underrated based on what he put together in this season. So I completely understand if he goes off to the NFL. We're hitting on all of it. Best options for defensive coordinator now that Tom Allen has left. Okay, if we're talking in terms of true, actual circumstances, no strings attached, I'll tell you who Penn State would want, ideally. Jim Knowles from Ohio State. And I'm not trying to argue that it's going to happen. I am not trying to say that this is, hey, there's a legitimate chance. No, it is a long shot. But Jim Knowles at Ohio State, it would be Penn State's top choice. I'm just saying. Al Golden over at Notre Dame, and defensive coordinator, right? In the national championship game, kind of same thing, a long shot. And with him interviewing for the head coaching job once upon a time, right beside James Franklin in those same conversations, I don't think Al Golden comes back to play second fiddle to James Franklin. It's only, if and when Al Golden ever returns to Penn State, it is only going to be as a head coach. So that means that James Franklin would need to leave for another job. And I'm not even going to entertain the Fire Franklin people there at that point in time. Hoping that Kobe King decides to run it back for one more year would make sense. And maybe he's waiting to see how these conversations, he only has 48 hours though. So defensive coordinator is a big part of it there. Let me throw out some other names because I gave the top two of the best options that are on the table, whether they're realistic or not. As far as some other names now, if I was making the decision, you put me in HR and you say, hey, Zach, pick the defensive coordinator for Penn State, I'd go Danton Lynn. I think Danton Lynn is one of the best coordinators in the entire country. He did wonders with UCLA's defense, and then he moved over to USC, and that was going to be a multi-year project. So USC's defense was no good. That's Danton Lynn cut into all of the issues that were really hindering that USC Trojans defense. Lynn, you give him this group of players. You give him Dani Dennis-Sutton, Tony Rojas, Zane Durant, Zachy Wheatley, AJ Harris, just to name the faces currently of this team. And he can give you a top 5 defense. He can give you, I think he can give you better results. I mean, Tom Allen, it stings to lose Tom Allen. I'm not going to sit here and say good riddance or adios or anything like that. It is not ideal to lose a top 10 a defensive coordinator that put together a top 10 defense, but clearly there were some issues that didn't, because this happened so quickly. For Tom Allen, because it went from really quiet rumors. The only people that were saying anything were some Clemson fans or anybody else. And then all of a sudden ESPN puts out a report that, hey, he's a top candidate and Clemson, has an offer on the table. And then 5 minutes later, up 24/7 and on 3 say it's a done deal. He's going to Clemson. Penn State didn't fight to keep him. And Tom Allen was quick to make that decision. I mean, wow. For the way that it happened, you go to the national semifinal and you're quick to jump over to another school. So clearly I will say this, it just wasn't an ideal fit. James Franklin and Tom Allen, nobody hates each other. Nobody had these serious issues, but I think where Tom Allen is at the stage of his career, family was certainly involved. From what I gathered, family wanted him to move back to an area that they were familiar with. They did not all move to State College. It was just he and his son. They were on staff together. And now they're going to relocate to Clemson, South Carolina. I mean, Tom Allen spent a lot of his coaching career either in Indiana, where he was born and raised, or the southeast part of the country between Ole Miss and coached some time down in the state of Florida. So this is I think a comfortability thing because it's not a money issue. Clemson certainly pays competitively for its coordinators, and he might get a little bit of a pay bump. But I think what matters to him are honestly coaching on the sideline. That was taken away from him. He was moved up to the press box. Do we know that he liked that move? Honestly, probably not. He's a football guy. He is a hardcore football guy. That probably did not sit well with him, but he was not going to let it get in the way of his work. And the results were justified the move. I wouldn't change anything. I would keep Tom Allen up in the booth, but it was that extension. There seemed to be communication issues where the play call went from Tom Allen to Dan Connor to the players because Tom Allen couldn't articulate the plays and the terminology to this group of players. It just, for whatever the reason, it didn't work. And I wish him well. I don't want to face Clemson in the postseason. Maybe that happens, right? Penn State versus Clemson in this 12-team format. So good for the Tigers that they got their top candidate. That was Dabo Swinney's number one candidate, and they went and made a push, and they ended up getting him. Breaking, Nicholas Singleton wide open in the flats for another screen, and Aller never looks in his direction. Well, what hurts about that is because he did look in his direction, and he missed him in that moment. Well, so that's one play. I'm not going to let one play define who Drew Aller, Nicholas Singleton, Kaytron Allen, and this Andy Kotelnicki offense in year 2 of running it back all together. It was a bad play, it was a bad throw, and it was a bad game. But I don't let that define. That is not a one-size-fits-all review of Aller, Singleton, and Allen as this trio of seniors coming back. So this is a national title team. People might not believe it immediately. Why are we acting like Penn State is far off? They just made the national semifinal and lost by 3 to Notre Dame. They lost by 7 to Ohio State. I don't know why we're sitting here and presuming that Penn State is way behind. That's why they're going all in on the 2025 season, because they got this close with little to no production from the wide receivers. Now what can you do with all of these talented NFL caliber players back in the fold? We're going to take one more break here and then get back into the comments section, talk about some of the other news. As well, as nice as it was for Penn State to have some players return, others are going into the transfer portal. We'll talk about that and more coming up after the break. And today's show is also brought to you by WayFair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. And you can always find that decluttering and refreshing your space will help you get back into a routine after the holidays there. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, WayFair is everything you need, all within your budget. You can look at furniture, and they have a huge selection that makes it so easy to find pieces that will fit your style and your budget. And the best part is the free and hassle-free delivery, even for larger items. WayFair's site is so easy to navigate, and you'll find everything you need in no time. There's something for every style and every home, and WayFair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every type of space, no matter the space, no matter the budget. Give your home the refresh it needs with WayFair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That is wayfair.com, WAYFAIR.com. WayFair, every style, every home. So Penn State, losing Tom Allen in the process. Other players happen to hit the portal as well or are no longer on the roster. And what does that do for the team? Like I said, there some great news for Penn State, but some not so good news either. Cam Miller is officially in the transfer portal. At defensive back, that's actually one of Penn State's strongest position groups. So Terry Smith, Anthony Poindexter are hard at work. And I guess I should have mentioned Anthony Poindexter as well for defensive coordinator replacements too. Elijah Robinson would make sense. He's a former Penn State grad assistant, former Penn State player, and he's been a defensive coordinator with Texas A&M and Syracuse. So he certainly has the experience there. And we can talk about that more, of course. But Cam Miller makes a lot of sense. And Jalen Kimber going off to the NFL, because Penn State is just, I mean, Jalen Kimber helped his NFL draft stock, and Cam Miller with his performance against Notre Dame, allowing, I mean, even whether he slipped and fell, whether it was incidental or the wide receiver crossed him up, regardless, you failed your assignment. And those conversations were probably not pleasant. You're a veteran corner, and you let Penn State down in that spot. But they have so many reinforcements. A.J. Harris, Elliott Washington, Davian Collins. You bring King Mack back, who is going to project as a safety, but could honestly give you some help at slot corner. That's the versatility of King Mack. So the defensive back room as a whole is in a great spot, but particularly corner. And then you have guys like John Mitchell and Antoine Belgrave Shorter and Kenny Wosley that are all, they started to get in the mix as true freshmen in late in games because they wanted to preserve their red shirt. But now that the red shirt is preserved, those guys are going to play more. Don't forget about Dejon Lane and Jameer Joseph and Darius Dixon, who I think are some of the better defensive backs in this class of 2025. Very well could see playing time, particularly Darius Dixon, if things go well. So this cornerback room is absolutely loaded for Penn State. So the losses of Jalen Kimber and Cam Miller will be offset just because of the potential. Again, another year of experience for those players. In case you missed it, Mekhi Flowers is no longer with the team as well. And Flowers kind of bounced back and forth. First, he was a defensive back, then he moved to wide receiver, and it just never really materialized for Penn State and for Mekhi Flowers. So it makes sense that he is going to move on. Tyler Johnson, another wide receiver that did not see a lot of playing time. I don't think any. Looked good in practice at times. Definitely stood out to me, but kind of the same thing. Wide receiver needs a complete and total reset. Absolutely needs a complete and total reset. I would keep an eye on, I don't know if it's official or anything like that. There was some speculation, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but Amari Evans might be someone to watch for to enter the transfer portal. I know that everybody was looking through and trying to figure out who was enrolled in classes because Nicholas Singleton's name didn't show up, and lo and behold, he returns. But I think Amari Evans is in that same situation, and I would not be surprised if he enters the portal. I don't think it's confirmed. I'm not seeing a lot of news, but it kind of is anticipated that he could be somebody that moves on himself. And why I say that is because I thought it was interesting when they went to get Devontae Ross. Ross has a similar profile to Amari Evans as this speedster, deep threat type of player that you need somebody downfield. You need a downfield target, and that's what Amari Evans was. So if Evans has the eligibility to come back, why would you? I mean, the more the merrier, I guess. Create some competition. But why would you go get somebody with the same player profile that you already have? And Evans, did give you what you were asking for, just not to the extent. He made the plays, just not enough to obviously secure his job. So Devontae Ross is supposed to be that better version of that speedster wide receiver. So keep an eye on Amari Evans if and when he does enter the transfer portal. Tyrese Mills, I was surprised about this one. Tyrese Mills is no longer with the team as well. I thought that he was going to stick around because starting safety spots are open. Aside from Zach Key Wheatley, Dejon Lane, King Mack, because KJ Winston and Jalen Reed are no longer there. They are entering the draft. Reed's out of eligibility. Winston wants to move on. He wants to get a head start on the NFL. Okay, that's fine. Respect his decision. But there are two starting spots open in this. Well, is Penn State even going to run the 4-2-5? I think they should, based on all the defensive backs that they have. I didn't even mention Zion Tracy. Zion Tracy could play safety, could play cornerback, wherever they need him to be. He has that same versatility. So you just have a lot of talented athletes that just can play wherever you need them to at safety and at cornerback for Penn State's defense. That's why I'm confident in a 2025 national championship run. So Tyrese Mills not coming back. I started to see an increase in playing time down the stretch, but dealt with some injuries. He's been around for a long time, and I think it just coaching staff might have been honest with him and said, you're still going to have to battle it out for backup reps. And who knows if that was something that's purely speculation, but I mean, they do have conversations. They do have these kinds of conversations with them where they just say, hey, this is the realistic path. Are you comfortable with being a backup? We'll take you as a backup or whatnot. So Tyrese Mills just never emerged as that safety or as that linebacker, kind of bounced back and forth between the two. Remember, he came from Lackawanna College, Daquan Brisker, Jair Brown, and it seemed like Tyrese Mills was going to be the next one. Didn't work out that way. Did not work out that way. So let's jump back into the comments section. I'll try to pick up where I lost my spot in the comments section. So Singleton coming back was not a surprise. Allen coming back was more of a surprise, and Dani Dennis-Sutton coming back was very much a surprise, and a pleasant one at that. So I would say, honestly, the biggest surprise of all of them, just because of the rumors and the chatter, and it wasn't until Pat McAfee kind of broke it open that Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen were coming back. And so Allen's honestly the biggest surprise to me, because my understanding, my assumption, maybe it was some wishful thinking, that Singleton and Dani Dennis-Sutton were going to come back. That postseason run that DDS had certainly made things a little more complicated, because he certainly helped out his draft stock. But I think the idea, look, teams are, when July 1st rolls around this year, July 1st, 2025, universities can now directly pay players. There is a salary cap. You have I think it's around $20 million where you can pay your student athletes. We can debate, does that make them employees? Are they really student athletes? Fill out a W-2 here. We'll debate that another time. Let's talk football X's and O's. But Dani Dennis-Sutton is going to be able to make NIL money, in addition to getting a piece of the revenue sharing, in addition to being able to develop and build for the future. And instead of a couple $1 million, and I say that so loosely, a couple $1 million for entering the draft and being selected in the third round, you could make 5, depending on how I do think he's a top 20 pick if everything goes well. And in that range, you will make, I think, give or take $5, $6, $7 million in a season on your rookie contract. I know that the first overall pick makes, give or take, 10 to 12 million per season. I think it's a 4-year, $40 million deal. And then each draft slot gets slightly lower each time. So that's why you want to take a quarterback number 1 overall, or as early as possible, because the value supposedly fits everything. But that's what Dani Dennis-Sutton is playing for. Okay, do you want to make $1 million per year on a 4-year deal from a rookie contract, or do you want to try your chance at $5, $6, $7 million per year on that rookie deal? Do you think Kobe King will be returning? It is truly a 50-50 thing. I don't think he will. My personal opinion, the logical evidence says to me, Kalen, his brother's in the NFL. He's already 1 year behind there. I don't personally think he can do any more to help his NFL draft stock as a linebacker prospect. I think Kobe King will move on. Tony Rojas, Dom DeLuca, it should be back, right? Special teams captain, but those would be your 2 starters guaranteed. And then see what you can get from an Anthony Specca. Keon Wiley will be fully healed up. He was one of the premier prospects in that class of 2022, and I talk about it being iconic. So don't forget about some of the other names that are there in the linebacker room. They just weren't at full strength. So I like that trio of Keon Wiley, Tony Rojas, and Dom DeLuca as your 3 linebackers in a 4-3 look, or the first 3 in a 4-2-5, whatever have you. Just get the best 11 on the football field. If that happens to be a safety, if that happens to be a linebacker, so be it. Why did KJ decide to go? He probably could have become a first rounder if he played all of next year. Good point. Good point. Some people just want to go to the pros. Some people just have different aspirations. For Dani Dennis-Sutton, he wants to, and I'm not saying that's not important to KJ Winston, but everybody's situation is different. I don't fault them, because if Dennis-Sutton, Singleton, and Allen all went off to the NFL and Penn State was kind of left without some of these star players, key players, if Drew went off to the NFL, I wouldn't have blamed any of them. I really wouldn't. These guys' dreams are to make the pros and have a long, sustainable pro career above all else. That's what they do. But this is Penn State is going all in for 2025. They want to change history. That Penn State is, that's this fringe top 10 team. No, this is a serious national title contender. They want to be a part of history, because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. You can go to the pros and have a 10-year career and be on some good teams maybe, but winning a national championship, if you're there for the regular, collegiate lifespan, you get a 4-year window of opportunity to take home a college football national championship ring. For them, that means something different. I'm happy the number of scholarships that are allowed has been increased. That's an interesting one. So it hurts walk-ons. So the days of the Dom DeLucas are effectively over. You get your best 105 that are available on scholarship. There are more people that are going to have their tuition and education paid for. That's all well and good. But players that want to, just for the sake of it, let me try my hand at Division I football and see if I can make my way and earn a scholarship, be one of those 85 players. You don't get that anymore. It's 105 and that's that. You don't have any walk-ons. You don't have any feel-good stories anymore like a Dom DeLuca. That's what that brings an end to. So I personally don't like it. They are losing Abdul Carter. They're losing Tyler Warren as well. But Abdul Carter is going to be a top 5 pick in the 2025 draft. And Tyler Warren's out of eligibility. It's the fact that they're bringing back Singleton and Allen, Aller, Dani Dennis-Sutton, Zane Durant, Zach Hugh-Wheatley, who are all going to be the best versions of themselves as veteran players. Don't forget about Anai White in the transfer portal. Don't forget about Kyron Hudson, Devontae Ross. And honestly, I like what they got from TJ Shanahan. That's another player that is a starting caliber player. He started half the season at Texas A&M, was a former 5-star guard, and Penn State just casually picked him up in the portal as not necessarily a guaranteed starter. Cooper Cousins is there, right? This is Phil Troutwine, I think is having the best run of not only the position coaches at Penn State, but honestly, arguably one of the best runs for a position coach across the country. Really. I mean, maybe J1 Sider has something to say about that too. The fact that he's been able to retain Singleton and Allen. So it's all good. Everybody's succeeding except for Marcus Hagans, of course. I want to finish on a positive note though. Positive note, right? Anybody else have any questions? Let's see. Bishop Fitzgerald was ours until Allen. Yes, they had a prior relationship. So Bishop Fitzgerald is certainly going to reconsider. I don't know that he ends up at Penn State. It's unfortunate, but those coach-player relationships certainly matter. So he might go to Clemson to follow Tom Allen. I think that's where we will end it here. So more decisions are yet to be made. And in the next 48 hours, you're going to get a lot of Penn State headlines with players going into the portal, players making NFL draft decisions and what have you. So don't think that Penn State is finished here. And then defensive coordinator rumors, interviews are going to be set up, who Penn State is targeting. Again, the Jim Knowles, Al Golden, if you think they're long shots, Penn State still wants them. Danton Lynn, I think, is a long shot too. Penn State still wants him. Elijah Robinson promoting within. Anthony Poindexter makes a lot of sense. We'll see what ultimately happens. But Penn State is going to be competitive in the marketplace and go get a top tier name. And if you haven't noticed, James Franklin has not picked a bad defensive coordinator. For what it's worth, Bob Stoops gave Penn State a lot early in James Franklin's tenure. Brent Pry was a home run promotion within. And then to get Manny Diaz, to get Tom Allen, it was a one and done, but he gave you a top 10 defense and helped coach to the national semifinal. My name is Zach Seiko. I'm the host of Locked On Nittany Lions. As always, if you are new to the show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this live show to recap a busy news day on this Monday, January 13th, and it's not going to slow down here. Penn State's got to be pretty active over the next 48 hours with player personnel and then coaching. If you are going to be a national title contender, you are going to need that anchor at defensive coordinator. And we'll talk about it all. Not just Penn State football, basketball, wrestling, you name it. It is on this show here, and that's why it is called Locked On Nittany Lions, your team every day.